Hi, everyone. I'm meteorologist Payton Major. Thank you so much for tuning in to either our Fox 12 Weather podcast or maybe you're tuning in on our First Alert Weather streaming show at 7 p.m. Either way, we're grateful you're here. I actually have a special guest with me. This is Gail Zuro. She's emergency manager for response and recovery at Multnomah County. How are you doing, Gail?
I'm doing great, Peyton. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, of course. And I will say I have mad respect for emergency managers. I took 3 or 4 emergency management classes in college, loved it, but it was so interesting to see, obviously, all the emergencies that could happen. I mean, way outside of weather, obviously, there's shootings and disasters caused by humans and then disasters not caused by humans. And I was just... It was over my head, but I loved it. So thank you for all you do, first of all.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
Of course. Okay, so emergency management, I think we hear about, obviously, your job, and we hear from you a lot when things are going on. But what does a typical day look like for you?
Well, it depends on what color the sky is, right? So if we're in blue sky time, depending on what program that you might be working on at the time or a project you might be working on, it might be doing community outreach. So we have a really great program being run by one of my coworkers for that. So someone might be tabling at an event or doing an outreach presentation. We could also be doing ordering supplies and getting them in. We can be repalletizing materials to get ready to distribute out to a shelter if that's what we need. We are participating in trainings and exercises and writing reports and being in meetings and all that kind of stuff. So every day, I mean, that's one thing. If you're going to get into emergency management, it's really one thing you have to consider is that every day is different. And you kind of got to roll with it, with whatever happens. During gray sky times, it's still kind of day-to-day stuff, but it's all about the activation we're in. Let's just say we're in winter weather activation. So, we start off with meetings with many people from both inside and outside the county to talk about what it is we're going to do today, how the day is going to go. And then we have sub meetings that happen to make sure everyone's on the same page and, rowing the boat in the same direction. And then our teams start getting materials out there. We start making sure that there are staff members to fill shifts at the shelters, et cetera. And those are long days, as you can imagine. We try and support the shelters, especially when they're 24 hours, for example. We need to support them well into the evening. So it's like I said, every day is different.
Yeah, definitely. And especially to bring up the winter events.
Yeah.
It's a bad word around here to
yes,
say
the
S word, snow. Just kidding. It's not a bad word around this time, but it's always we could trigger chaos at the station, so we try not to.
Absolutely.
So let's say there is a large storm coming. You mentioned obviously what happens before, but what happens during and then after the event?
Yeah, well, to go back to before for a minute, we work really closely. We start bringing people together when we see something on the horizon. And just to be clear that we go with the National Weather Service. They support us. They provide us briefings. As you probably know, they provide us both email briefings and verbal briefings as well. And they're always available for us to ask questions. So when we see something on their horizon that we should be concerned about, we'll start convening individuals from the county, some from outside the county, which includes City of Portland, City of Gresham, our other cities, et cetera, to just kind of talk about, hey, here's what's coming. Maybe we do or do not have to take action, but let's be aware of it. And we also get comms involved at that point because we want to start ramping up the outreach to the community via social media posts, press releases to our broadcast friends and our print friends as well, to make sure that people, of course, they're hearing the forecast, but here are some things you can do about it. Make sure your car has half a tank of gas. Make sure that you have blankets and a snack and water in your car, that kind of thing. So always trying to get ahead of that, and having something ahead of us is a great instigator for that. So people hear it and can maybe apply it very soon, as opposed to doing preseason messaging, which we also do, which can get lost when you have a November like we've had, which has been kind of warm and not so rainy.
Absolutely.
So that's before. And then during, of course, like I described already, we have lots of meetings. We're constantly making sure supplies are getting out, that reports are getting written, that we have situational awareness for ourselves and our leaderships so that they can make decisions appropriately. And then, of course, after, like I said earlier, we do surveys and we check in with people who have worked in our shelters, have worked with us here in logistics and in other teams to see how things went. Because we know how things went, but we also know how things are supposed to go. So it's really great to have that outside picture. And then, of course, we wrap up things with press as well, press and social media and whatnot. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, tons of steps goes into something as simple as a little bit of snow in the forecast. But as we've experienced, a little bit of snow can be a big problem.
It can be, especially for our houseless community, right? Snow, freezing rain, very cold temperatures. So what some of us may feel is more of an inconvenience, for them, it could be life-threatening. So we absolutely want to make sure that we're taking the actions, not just if we're setting up sheltering, but also for our outreach teams. So our outreach teams will go out there. They'll have extra supplies that we provide to try and help our houseless community be able to deal with that weather.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think, we often think about keeping ourselves safe, our families safe, but there's so many people out there that need this help. And it's not just winter. It's obviously any kind of inclement weather, the heat, the wildfire smoke. I mean, there's so much that could impact us.
Flooding on Johnson Creek, for example.
Yes, burn scar flooding as well.
Yep.
Man, we have it pretty good here, don't we?
Yeah, we really do.
I know. Okay, so have you ever, obviously this happens to us all the time, so I'm sure you've dealt with it. When you're in the middle of an event, it's probably a winter event, and things go from a mild winter storm to all of a sudden, we got 10 to 14 inches on the ground.
Yeah.
Do you often have to just do a 180 and go, okay, here's what we have to do now?
Well, our thresholds kind of guide us with that. And so, like in the event you are referencing, we, in what was that, February of 23? I can't remember now.
Yes.
But we had already prepared to start opening up shelters for several days. Our outreach teams have already been out in the field checking in with our houseless communities. We've already been putting out social media and other communications. We have a whole team that reaches out to apartment managers, reminding them to check in on their residents, making sure everyone stays warm and dry. So going from potentially 2 inches of snow, which would be above our threshold, to 10, what really that impacts is our ability to get around town, right? And be able to be as responsive as we would like to a shelter needing more supplies. Doesn't mean we can't do it. It just means we have to do a little bit more planning. We have to make sure we've got our studded tires or our chains, making sure everyone is comfortable driving in that weather, making sure that they have extra supplies in the vehicles. That sort of thing is what, when you go from 2 to 10 inches, really does for us. And the same thing kind of happens the other direction, right? So we may get snow tonight and then we don't get snow. We've still probably already taken the step to open up those shelters so that we can make sure people are safe. At least then we'll just keep that going overnight and we'll end everything in the morning depending on what the situation is. But that's happened as well, right? So, weather is, I know meteorology is a science, but it's not just a science, right? It's an art. Yes. And especially here in Portland, it can be so difficult. So we just do our best to get the best information we can from the National Weather Service and have internal conversations with, subject matter experts to help guide what our response is going to be.
Yeah, and you got to really plan for everything. So
we kind of do, yeah. And that includes non-winter things, as you mentioned, non-weather.
Definitely. Yeah, this cough, what was it, 2021?
2021
heat wave. Yes, I lived.
Yeah, that was our first time. I'd only been with the county about a year at that point, and we had been doing COVID. So that was one of my first, not my first, but one of my first responses. And it was the biggest summer response that this group has ever done, the county's ever done, because we just haven't needed it before then. So, boy, talk about learning a lot, kind of right then and there.
Yes, and it was beyond probably a threshold that you guys even thought of, just like we did. We never thought we'd ever get above 110, let alone, break a crazy record.
Well, and what that can impact, like we had trouble finding food because so many restaurants had to close down because their air conditioner systems couldn't keep their employees safe, like in the kitchens and stuff like that. Like that, you would never think that. You'd think you can always go somewhere and get a pizza or get, 35 pizzas, from a couple places to deliver to a shelter. But, that was a real challenge for us while, when that was going on. And, ice was getting limited and all kinds of stuff. Water wasn't available for a while to like restock our bottled water supply. So yeah, it was a huge learning experience with unfortunate consequences.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we won't speak about that event anymore. That one's not great. Okay, so you mentioned obviously local communication. You talk to counties, you talk to apartment complexes, obviously the National Weather Service. When would you have to make it more of a state or even a federal response?
Yeah, I'm not so sure about a federal response because so number one thing about emergency management is all emergencies are local. So you start at the lowest level as possible to see if that can be handled there. And then you move up with every level. So for us, if we had a situation, which we've had, where we can't do X, we go to the state and we say, state, we need help to do X. And then the state says, we're on the way, or we have to go to the federal government, or we have to there's interstate compacts that we can go see if that thing or that service we need is available from a neighboring state. Can Washington help us? Idaho help us, etc. So that's how it kind of works. So the city of Portland, for example, if they need help with something, they will come to us. And if we can take care of it, great. If we can't, then we can move that request up through the ranks. So it's definitely a whole county response. So we've had like that February storm, right? We had 10 inches, but Hillsborough had practically nothing. So Washington County was available to help if we needed it. Whereas we've helped Washington County with supplies, let's say, when they've needed it and we didn't. So we definitely have great relationships with the region. And we definitely work together to support each other when all kinds of events happen. I mean, we're all here to help each other be successful in addressing this emergency for our community.
Yeah, all hands on deck, especially when it comes to big events. So you obviously have to do a lot of communicating. And communication, I think the most effective way to get the word out is always a question I'm trying to answer. I think everybody's trying to answer, especially when you're in that communication realm. So in your opinion, what have you found as some of the most effective ways to communicate?
Well, we have a wonderful communications team here in the county, and that's really a good question for them because they can tell us more like what got the best responses. But obviously social media posts, obviously we do a lot of interviewing during an event. My director, Chris Voss, is often in front of the camera. Sometimes they're here at the warehouse, and that helps a lot to be able to get the message out. But I think we have teams within the county, and I'm sure the cities have them as well, where they can target the most vulnerable populations, which may not always be our houseless community. In the summer, sometimes that's almost as much housed as it is. And so we have programs and program leaders that will really communicate directly with those vulnerable populations in whatever mechanism that they need to use. And that really does help. And we've definitely seen improvement in that as we've built out, as I mentioned earlier, these the list of managers of these apartment complexes. As they've taken the effort to communicate with that group, we've really definitely seen some improvements in that area as well. So I think trying to be broad and specific at the same time, which is a lot of work for our comms team and for our other programs who are reaching out, making a call down list of dozens and dozens and dozens of calls that need to be made to make sure that those vulnerable folks are safe.
Right, and it becomes a time crunch situation, especially with weather events, which makes it that much more of a huge task.
And I think I think it's really important that everyone remembers to have multiple ways to get notified, whether it's TV or radio or apps like yours, or knowing and understanding wireless emergency alerts. We did that test back in August where we sent out a message to everybody in the county, and it was super successful. And it also gave us a lot of insight to what people did or didn't know about how this works and if they can opt in or opt out and all of that. So, we're going to be developing probably in the next year or so a communication, outreach program to try and educate the community about these alerts. So it's just really important that you have lots of ways to receive them.
Yes, so important because it might not just be your phone. Maybe you know, have the TV on as
Absolutely.
well, or that radio is so helpful, especially when you lose power or if you're in a remote area, it still works.
Yep.
I always say, I know it's a weather radio, and I know it may be old fashioned, but it
Yeah,
works.
a NOAA radio is great. It's not that expensive, and it's really handy in emergencies. And a lot of times you can get them like with cranks, so you can like charge your phone, things
Yeah,
like that.
that's always exciting. We're like all excited about cranking up the radio. Okay.
Cranking the radio.
I love it. Okay, so what's something you've learned, or maybe just even your team as a county, you have to learn from past events? Because you're talking, obviously, there's a lot of debrief after
Yeah.
something happens. What are some of those things and conversations you guys have?
Yeah, it's sometimes it is about communications. Did we communicate too early or too late? Did we communicate the right things? We learn about training. What does our staff and volunteers and staff from other jurisdictions need to be successful? For example, in our severe weather shelters, it's do we need all this stuff? And if so, when do we need it? When does it need to get there? Communication, information, training, that's usually where the biggest improvements can be. It's not if we should buy one kind of bottled water or another, right? It's bigger than that, right?
Right.
But that's the kind of feedback we want, because that's how you improve the program and bring it to a place where it just runs smooth as possible in any kind of event. So even though we do a lot of severe weather sheltering, that translates to any kind of emergency sheltering we might have to do. If we have to work with the Red Cross, for example, to evacuate a neighborhood because of some incident that's happened, knowing that we have all those supplies and we know how to deploy them, helps a lot. And so, that's kind of, I think that's a lot of what we hear after an event and what we strive to try and improve on. Sometimes it takes a couple more events or the next season to really implement some of the improvements. But it's really great that we get that feedback from everybody involved.
Yeah, and we always welcome feedback too. I mean, obviously, if the forecast changes, we're just as frustrated. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. We're not just sitting, back eating popcorn and going, oh, didn't work this time. We are, trying to figure out what happened, what can we do better next time. And going back to weather, it is an art.
And it's tough, right? Because we have to make decisions that will impact people and budgets on the best available information. And we just do the best we can to always err on the side of safety for ourselves and our community. But you're right. I mean, sometimes it just goes the other way.
Yes, it does. How do you see your job changing in 10 years? It's a big question.
Yeah, I think that's tough. I think as an industry, emergency management has really matured and developed, and I think that will continue with certifications and trainings and more recognition of what we do. I think that's for the industry as a whole. I think specifically we're going to have to get more emergency managers will have to get savvier when it comes to navigating the difficult situations sometimes we're in, whether it's budget or policy. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. And then of course, technology, right? Things are constantly changing. Even just when we send out alerts, the alerting systems are changing constantly. There's bigger and better all the time. And just being able to kind of always be going with the flow of technology, budgeting, policies, environment, climate change is going to be huge impact to the industry coming up here. And it already has been. I mean, just look at the last 10 years alone. In your data, it's crazy how much the climate has changed already. So, being aware of that and what does that mean for your community, you have to add that in now when you're thinking about hazards that you want to mitigate and have your community prepared for, is what does a changing climate mean for your community as well, including trying to think outside the box of things that you never had to deal with that you might have to deal with now because of climate change or other environmental changes.
Exactly. I think there's so much information nowadays, so much, and it just gets noisy. And I think even sometimes, I step outside my meteorology hat and I just pretend I'm just, a person who knows nothing about weather, nothing about what's happening. And I would go on my social media, and it's just, post after post after speculation after crazy graphic with all these numbers and colors on it. And I can't even imagine looking at that. I would be scared out of my mind. You just don't know what's going on. And so kind of back to the emphasis on make sure you have multiple ways to receive alerts. Also make sure you're getting your information from a trustworthy source and not just Joe Schmo on Instagram because he told you you're going to have grapefruit size hail. It's not always true.
Yeah, I know that you all have been definitely talking about that a lot lately, with reposting things that just didn't seem reasonable about, I don't know, what, like feet of snow in Portland next week or, something silly. Like, you really do have to be careful. There are a lot of great websites. Like I said, we primarily focus on NWS, but there are a lot of other great websites from everyone from meteorologists like at utilities, for example. They put out really good websites. So there's lots of places to get, all the news stations. We peek over at all of your forecasts as well when things are getting going. So there's a lot of good, like you said, trusted sources that you can go to for information. Yeah. And really just trying to remember that 5 to 7 days out is the sweet spot. Everyone puts out predictions on what winter is going to be like, but we just won't know until 5 to 7 days out. I would emphasize that, which I'm sure you all do repeatedly, but that's your best bet. And even that can sometimes change, but trying to look out like, middle of December is supposed to be colder. Who knows what's going to happen? That's a month away. They don't know for sure.
Yeah, they do not. That is so funny. I'm laughing because this is a very common topic back in the Weather Center. We're going, why did they say it's going to snow in February, February 15th? You're like,
yeah.
That's interesting. So we're getting close to winter. You may start communicating, hey, make sure you cover your plants when it's frosty or have those alerts on or change your tires to snow tires if you're up in the mountains. So how do you think people can find that information? Where's the best place to find that stuff?
Oh, yeah. So we have lots of places at Multnomah County's website, but the best place is to go to MultCo. That's multco.us/cold. That's a great place to start to get all sorts of information. There's ways to contact people if you have further questions, if you want to volunteer to help us in the shelters. Some events are long enough and serious enough where we may need community volunteers to help us in the shelters. So there's a whole place where you can go find that information on our website as well. Those are some places. And then sometimes it's just in social media posts. Sometimes it's in the community outreach presentations that we do, talking to your neighbors. That's the biggest thing, right? You take care of yourself, your family, your neighbors, and things will be just fine. And reminding your neighbors, like, have a half a tank of gas. Have a blanket in the car just in case. Try not to go out today. It's supposed to get icy. Check on your elderly neighbors, your neighbors with access and functional needs. Make sure they're okay. Try and prepare for power outages. Some preparedness is better than no preparedness. So, we can give you a list of 100 things that you should have. But if you can just try and stay home when you don't have to go out when there's 3 inches of snow on the road, that would be great. That helps everybody. So, so a lot of that stuff you can find at /cold at multco.us/cold, and multco.us/EM for emergency management is another great place to go for all sorts of community-based information.
Great. And I also want to mention, because holiday season's coming up and obviously discounts are coming up left and right, great gifts for people is a good emergency kit. If you've got a 16-year-old just started to drive, give them a car emergency kit. It's just so important to have that. I was at my friend's house the other day, and I saw a tote box in their garage that said emergency kit, and I was like, you guys are doing it right. Good job. But I know not everybody has that. So.
Right, and not everybody can do that. So, we talk about when we're tabling events, like, start where you can. I ask people, hey, next time you get a new pair of walking shoes or running shoes or shoes of any kind, put the other pair under your bed. Because if an earthquake happens, this isn't for weather, right? We didn't talk about earthquake, which thankfully, but if an earthquake happens, you may have to walk across broken glass to get out of your house. So make sure you have shoes under your bed. if you don't have shoes in your room. So, oh, they're like, yeah, actually I have a spare pair. Then they feel like they've gotten started. So, that's really important to encourage our community to start somewhere, because somewhere is better than nowhere. So for preparedness of all kinds, weather, earthquake, whatever.
Fire. We can name 50 things.
Wildfires. Like, the list is long.
It is.
Tsunamis, if you're going to go to the coast, there's all kinds of things to be prepared for. But you can start small. And we'd love for you to just start anywhere.
Yeah, I love that. Start somewhere. Just start.
That's right.
That's all that matters. Do you have anything else to add, Gail?
I don't think so. I mean, I'd like to say that it takes a village, right? It's not just me, obviously. There's 18 of us in Multnomah County, and there's jurisdictions all throughout the area that may have just one person who's trying to do emergency management. So anything anyone is asked, if you get an ask for volunteering or anything, think about it, because you could be helping not just yourselves and your neighbors, but your community as well. So we're really fortunate to have such a strong team here where we can do a lot of extra things that a lot of other jurisdictions can't. And we're here to support all of Multnomah County, not just the city of Portland or Gresham, but also Troutdale, Wood Village, Corbett, everyone. We're here to support the best that we can with the team that we have. So, we're really lucky that way. And yeah, I guess that would be what I would want to finish with. And again, remind everyone to please have multiple ways to receive emergency messages.
Yes, we are digging in that message. Come on, people.
Yes. With winter coming.
Yes, we are. All right, Gail, well, thank you so much for your time. I've learned so much about emergency management, and I'm sure obviously lots of our viewers have too. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your week.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, thank you for your time.
You're welcome, and thanks a lot for having me.